since God made specific food for specific gene group, when you remove the Africans from Africa, did you bring his food with him? The answer was no. Well, brothers and sisters, if the food that God made for us was not brought with us when we were brought on those ships from Africa 500 years ago, what are we eating? What are we ingesting? And whatever we are ingesting, did our archaeologists, paleontologists, historians, or Egyptologists, did they take time out to ask about the food that would maintain my hormones, my central nervous system in perfect working condition? No, they didn't ask these questions. This was never even thought of. They went on to tell us about Plato, the philosophers. Plato, Aristotle, Diogenes, as if though that matters. The archaeologists were telling us about the various fossils that was found in Egypt 10 million years ago. The others, the historian, they talk about what took place in Africa so many hundreds of thousands of years ago. But never did one said that he found or that they found a food that is consistent with our cellular structure. And that is of most importance. Apply that same example to the plants. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you that are acquainted with plants, like the burdock, the yellow dock, those are only two, the Virginia snake root. Those of you that are not acquainted with the plants in the tropics, the demagagua, the kalawala, the cypress, these are powerful plants. These plants are responsible for us at the Usha Research Institute reversing these pathologies or diseases. So you find that these plants also does not live in an environment that is inconsistent with their cellular and genetical structure. You will never find kalawala grown in Canada, nor cypress, nor demagagua. That you will never find. Like you will never find the burdock in Central America, because these plants, the kalawala, the demagagua, and the cypress, are plant that grows in the tropical region of the planet. You will never find those plants in America. Likewise, you will never find yellow dock, burdock, or even the one shepherd purse in Central America, because the climatic condition is inconsistent with the existence of those plants. So as we take a very close look at plants and animals, we find that they have to obey a cosmic arrangement, a life procession that has maintained throughout creation. Does that apply to humans? The answer should be yes. When God placed each group, whether Eskimo, Chinese, Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans, we were placed in different geographical locations with a food that is consistent with the cellular structure that we represent. But as we all know, that everything begins and ends with God, the Creator. So one could easily see or understand that if God is the creator of the universe, then it behooves us to understand those things that are made by God. That seemed to be some difficulty for many. And this is what we found, that there is only one disease, and that was said for the first time to the Supreme Court of New York in 1988, that there is only one disease. That one disease that is afflicting us is the basis for all manifestations of pathology. The mucous membrane has been compromised. Compromised by what? By an acid substance. You see, our body are alkali. The food should be alkali. Being that it is alkali, it is acid-free and it is electrical.
Go ahead. The answer to that.
It was asked about the sexually transmitted diseases. Those that are lesser are considered lesser, but they are not lesser. There's only one disease. There's never been two diseases in the world. There's only been one disease, the compromising of the mucous membrane. And the mucous membrane of the African has been compromised 400 years now. What has the African ate since he left Africa that is really equitable to his system? What? And he has not eaten anything. So therefore the biological structure has been weakened over a period of 400 years. And in weakening the biological structure, then you may get lupus, you may get herpes, and you may get anything.
Anything coming your way.
Because the body has been deprived and the immune system has been compromised. And the immune system is responsible for diabetes, for leukemia, for sickle cell, for every disease in the world, including death. So don't only attribute AIDS to the immune system. If your immune system is strong, you cannot get sick with any disease. So we're going to straighten that.
I have a sister who she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she's been in my care for 2 years. I do have her on a fresh food diet, all organic foods, all raw foods, and I'm seeing a big improvement. But I feel as though she needs some other things. And what else can I do to help her?
Alzheimer's.
She has Alzheimer's, yes, sir.
Okay, Alzheimer's. That's a brain problem, right? Remember what I said? There's only one disease? Okay. When you have mucus in the nasal passage, it is sinusitis. When you have mucus in the bronchial tubes, it's bronchitis. When you have mucus in the lungs, it's pneumonia. But now you have mucus where? For you to have Alzheimer's, where is the mucus? So we have to remove the mucus from out of the system, especially the brain, but then we have to feed the brain. That's where biochemistry comes into play. The brain. Like if the sister was suffering with rickets, that's bones, right? So we have to address calcium. If she had leukemia, it would be blood, that's iron. But now she has Alzheimer's. She has mucus in the brain, which prevents the brain from receiving what? Oxygen. Now, what is the brain composed of? Copper and carbon. That is what produces electricity. Copper and carbon. It's simple. Copper and carbon produces electricity. You go to an electrical plant, and all you're going to see is a big wheel turning, and it's copper. But against the wheel are these carbon brushes, and the friction of the carbon and the copper produces the resonance they call electricity. Electricity is not fire, it is vibration. But when you short circuit it, it's become fire.
Yeah. Excuse me.
I'd like to ask Dr. Sabi about cancer. You explain how cancer gets started in the body.
The same way a common cold started. In any part of the body, any way cancer appears, it means that there is a condition that has manifested over and above because it has been progressively getting worse unattended or unknowing. There's no difference with cancer and a common cold. The mucus in the nose stayed a long time, they call it sinusitis. And as they begin to eat the cells, they call it cancer. And that's whether in the reproductive organ, in the breast, in the head, in the brain, in the eye, wherever. It's all mucus.
Of natural electric food and
If you want to see a germ, they get a microscope. And if you get a wound by a gunshot or an appendix has burst, you need to be open real quick. So there is place for the knife, but under extreme conditions. But as far as curing diseases, there's only one way. That is the herbs, because they are electrical. Their molecular structure is complete. They will assimilate. They are carbon-based.
Anybody know, or is there a question? All about the Arabs. Arabia has no food.
You see, many of us blacks hold the Arabs supreme. Not in my book. Because how could someone eat artificial food all their life and be smart when the very food that you eat influences the brain to allow you to think? And if you eat the wrong food, you're going to think the wrong things. And that, again, is common sense. If you take a diesel automobile and put in it gasoline, what happens?
It can run.
It cannot run.
If you just put gasoline
In a diesel engine,
Oh, no, I didn't hear that part of the question.
you can't.
No.
So the human body responds the same way.
The polar bear eats blood. Not so for the gorilla. He's plant. But now we look at the behavior of these two animals. We find that the gorilla is a very pleasant animal. He has no enemies in the forest. He raises his offspring just like we do. Just like we do, he raises his offspring. He's a pleasant animal. Not so for the polar bear. This animal eats blood. He has to kill to live, because blood compels that animal to be vicious and savage, so he eats blood. We go to the birds. The eagle is a bird, so is a buzzard, and so is a hummingbird. That's a bird too. But the hummingbird, like the gorilla, he likes to indulge in the nectar of the plants. He have nothing to do with blood. He sucks the nectar from the plant. He's a very beautiful little bird. He's very gentle. Not so for the eagle. The eagle, on the other hand, eats blood, eats rats, eats snakes. But look at the disposition of the eagle and that of the polar bear, opposed to the hummingbird and the gorilla.
Well, does everybody have a pineal gland? I was told the other day that everybody doesn't have one. Is that true or not?
If you had no pineal gland, you would not be alive. You would be no motion. It's impossible. Every race has pineal glands. Not every race has thymus glands. Oh, that's different.
Oh, yeah. Well, tell us about those.
The thymus glands. The thymus gland regulates sex. It also maintains energy. The thymus gland also keep you childlike, non-aggressive. But in some races, the thymus gland disappears at age 8. Then one becomes violent in one movement. But now, if the thymus gland disappears in some races at age 8, principally the Caucasian, what helps one to retain the thymus gland within the biology? The presence of what? Carbon. Thank you. The body responds the same way. The black race has never had anyone to really show us what we should or should not eat. The only man that came was messenger of our Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The only man that said, stay away from the pork. And when Isibi sat and ate with the messenger in his house on 3837 South Woodlawn Avenue in Chicago, the messenger personally told me and Brother Harry Nance from New Orleans that we should not be eating meat at all.
Well,
And we should not be eating anything on this menu because it is poisonous to us. But if he, the messenger of Allah, Elijah Muhammad, had told the black race of the United States to stop everything, who would listen then? So he had to he couldn't cold turkey us. He was very intelligent. He removed the pork. And just by removing the pork and many other little things, they rebelled and they said they wasn't going to join because they had to eat their pork. Telling us that we have been conditioned, not only brainwashed. I don't even think of brainwashing. I'm talking about that conditioning. They have made us addicts. Which black person in America eats food that is consistent with their African ancestry? Don't even go there, because none. He said, no. What did the Maya eat? A lady who was part of the tour, the group, jumped up and said, corn, of course. The man looked at me and looked at the lady and said, lady, if the Maya ate corn, this man here would not have asked that question. He would have known that. So there is something about that corn that we have to question.
oh no.
Then he turned back to me and he said, what did they eat? I said I could begin with the teosinte, the cablote, the chipiling. These are natural green that grows in the forest of Honduras. Natural green that grows in the forest. The teosinte is a plant that produces a kernel that looks like a corn, but the difference is it is non-starch. They make the tamales from the teosinte, and they mix the chipiling in it, which is a green, and they make these tamales, and they still do in Santa Rosa de Copan. And when you all come to Honduras, I will introduce you guys to these tamales. That's right, all natural. The Maya did not eat corn, rice, beans, chicken, eggs, pork, cows. Why? Because these things did not exist in Honduras when Christopher Columbus came. They only ate those things that were natural. But the guide knew that he didn't know what the Maya ate. And how many Africans in Africa knows what their ancestors ate? They don't know. What does the African eat today? Rice. That's all they have. And rice is a poison.
Chicken.
Not only is it starch, and it is because it contains, and it converts into carbonic acid, but it contains cyanide.
Well, how is it those little, I'm going to say something wrong here. Burmese people, like Chinese, Japanese, them people, how they eat it every day?
But what about them? Because they eat it every day. Are they the healthiest people on the planet? You never seen a Chinese or a Japanese walk straight. His spine just cannot hold up straight. He always walk with a drop in his spine. He just can't do it. He eats nothing but starch. The Chinese should give credit, and a lot of credit, to the Italian that went down there. What is his name? Marco Polo. Because at least he took them the wheat kernel that they could make their noodles. Before this man, what is his name? The Italian Marco Polo, Chinese could make noodles.
Not man. Anything that God made has no starch. That's another thing. Anything that nature makes has no starch. Anything that man made has to have starch, because starch is a binder. To titrate two unequal chemicals, you have to use a starch. Starch is not a food. Starch is a chemical. And what have we been eating since they took us away from Africa? Starch and blood. Inconsistencies. Well, there is something that we, just found out in the last 15 or 20 years. There is a substance that has been fed to our people in and out of Africa and probably around the world, because I see it in Asia, not only in Africa. I see it in South America. I saw it in Brazil. I saw it in Suriname. I saw it in Guyana. I saw it all through Central America. What we are talking about is cyanide. Cyanide have a tendency to interfere with brain waves, vibration, or hormonal message. Cyanide interfere with the hypothalamus. Cyanide interfere with the pituitary gland. Cyanide interfere with the central nerve system. Elected and chose to turn his back on God and go to get a chemical that was made in a laboratory. We find that cyanide is so powerful. Cyanide would have you acting against yourself, not to mention the Creator. He has no place in life today. Because if the Creator had a place in our life today, as much as we would like for it to be, then most certainly we would not be drinking carrot juice and wheatgrass juice. We would not be eating a cow that was made by a laboratory. So there we find that violation is surmounting, right? A whole lot of it because of the cyanide.
What would you do? Or show me each plan, or how would you go about it?
Oh, I got to go way before the plan. I got to show you where we would derailed and change that environment, that brain environment. I have to change that immediately, that you could begin to see. Because with the images that you're going to see are not the images that I would see, because all of us are individually put together. We are unique, unlike the other. I would put the individual on a path that would avail him the privilege to see. And in seeing, then he could make a right decision, a good decision. That's all I did. And my grandmother started me out by understanding that I was not supposed to listen to anyone. No one but yourself. And if I have to go outside of me, train your eyes towards Mother Nature, the forest. And I would do this.
Find them in the popa. This is what we put together recently, is the African formula. The African formula has a tendency to change your life in the matter of minutes because it addresses every part of you.
Eliminate
Kaposis sarcoma?
and the disease that you've dealt with, the AIDS, cancer, leukemias, to arrest the progression and eliminate all the whatever symptoms, damage,
But that's what we've been doing for the last 20 years.
and restoring the full body back to.
But that's the only way you could cure. That's the cure. To remove that particular erosion, to remove that particular condition, whatever condition, whether AIDS or blindness, and restore 100% health. That's the only way I could do it. Through what? An intracellular cleansing. This is what is done in Miami. We put together our compound based on an electric system. Where do you go in America or in New York and find electric food in a bottle? Where do you go? And the body is electrical. We only have to ask that one question. Is the body electrical? Yes. So therefore it necessitates electric food. Well, where do you find that in New York?
Okay, let me to ask you on that same subject. Let's say the generator that gives us electricity here in the city was cut off, and we wanted to get more electricity. What would we do? Would we stick one in the ground, or how would we work?
Stick what in the ground?
A wire.
No. What produces electricity?
Electrons.
No way. I was an electrician. I am an engineer. I work in what you call steam generating plants. I have a degree, I have a license in what is known as thermodynamics. We are dealing with physics now. The only thing that produces electricity, the only thing that produces electricity is the friction of copper and carbon. That could be seen in your automobile. Take out your generator and see what it has inside. It has a copper wheel and some carbon brushes that touches against it when it turns. Here's an example. This is the copper wheel in the generating plant that produced the electricity in this room. It is spinning at only 90 revolutions per minute, but against this copper wheel there are carbon brushes, and this is what you see. The spinning of the copper wheel against the carbon brush creates a friction. That friction is called resonance. Resonance is electricity, not electrons. Resonance. The resonance produces the electrons, not before.